go.
Good evening and welcome to the Friends of InDepthNH.org's event. My name is Beverly Stoddart and I will be the moderator for tonight's discussion. You know, we all have friends. We all have close acquaintances that we cherish. But another word for friend is ally. And tonight we are asking you to be a friend, be an ally to InDepthNH.org, to our nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Everyone who works for or helps with In-Depth New Hampshire is either a volunteer or a freelance writer who chooses to write for us. Nancy West, our founder and editor, will take you through the easy steps for you to be a friend, but will make a great deal of difference to InDepthNH.org. These are simple steps to great rewards. Joining us tonight is Courtney Lewis, who is with the Institute for Nonprofit News, INN. They support more than 450 independent news organizations to shape the emerging field of nonprofit news. She is going to talk about NewsMatch, a collaborative fundraising project. And NewsMatch is our biggest fundraiser of the year that takes place in November and December. Also speaking tonight with us is Steve Taylor. He's a former newspaper editor and reporter and New Hampshire's agricultural commissioner for over 25 years. He's going to speak about why he volunteers and serves on the board of directors for In-Depth New Hampshire. We will take about a half an hour for this part of the event, and then for the second half, we will address your questions, the questions that you have on how you can be a friend to In-Depth New Hampshire. All we ask is that you submit all of your questions through the chat link. We thank you for attending, and now I would like to introduce Nancy West, founder, publisher, editor of InDepthNH.org. Nancy.
If I may, I would like to say, let's kind of draw this out a little bit. It looks like people are still joining. The number is still pretty low. I think there's more people in the Zoom than there is watching. So let's stretch it out, or just to let you know, it looks like people are still getting in.
Okay,
And
what do you want us to do?
I don't know. We could, Nancy, why don't you take it away from here?
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Good evening. I'm Nancy West, and in the year 2015, I founded the New Hampshire Center for Public Interest Journalism with my son, Montana West, and a dear friend, Bob Charest, who's now our board chairman. And we all looked around and said, what's happening with news? You know, we saw fewer and fewer reporters working. We saw revenues declining for newspapers. We're seeing this all over the country. It's not special to New Hampshire. But we said, what can we do? And we were very lucky very early on to hook up with the Institute for Nonprofit News because they were very helpful in training us in how to run a nonprofit news outlet. So the New Hampshire Center, the New Hampshire Center for Public Interest Journalism, every day we put out InDepthNH.org. We're a nonprofit news outlet, 501c3, and we're old school journalism. I think we have roughly 1,000 years of experience between us because we've just all been around a long time. And we love doing what we're doing and we can't stop, you know, and the Washington Post says it best. Democracy dies in darkness. We're just not going to let that happen, even though we're very small. And although we're very small, we're growing gangbusters. And that's because of you folks. You know, our readers have been so great to us and kept us in business these 9 years with some help from some grants from different large funders. And now I keep getting these letters from you people. And they say, thank you for doing this. A lot of your letters come with a check. They say, thank you for doing this for us, you know, making sure we don't forget about news. And even emails, I get emails saying, you know, this is what we need in the state. I really sense that you understand that as a 501c3, InDepthNH.org and the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits for public interest journalism, we belong to you. I think I put it out in our new nightly newsletter a lot. We love working for you, you know? I mean, we have always loved doing news, but working for InDepthNH.org, it's just such a joy. You know, our mission is to save journalism in New Hampshire and to make sure you get truthful, ethical, unbiased news. And we need that or we're going to lose our democracy. And especially, I know everybody's getting excited about the November 5th election. Now is the time for us to really, really buckle down, make sure our last end of the year fundraisers are very special and that we tell people a lot about who we are and make you a part of us. And that's what we're hoping the Friends of InDepthNH.org will do. I hope you'll join us, feel a part of us, and we're going to make it fun, or hopefully you'll make it fun, because we have fun doing what we're doing. I think everybody should. Saving local news shouldn't be dreadful and dreary, where, you know, we can have some fun. It takes creative ideas to see what's going to work. And just showing up tonight shows me that you really care about local news, that you want to do it. Plus, not only that, our daily readers on our MailChimp list is well over 10,200 today. And that means people are looking for real news and they know where to find it. You're not going to find it on Facebook, stay away, just a warning. And there are a lot of great newspapers in the state, and we're hoping to help all of them. And that's our mission, you know, it's that simple. We're not trying to be the New York Times. We're not trying to be the biggest newspaper in New Hampshire. We want to get the truth out, stories that will go uncovered if we don't do them. And there's a lot of those stories happening every day that just, I look and here, there's a big news story and no one's covering it. So we try to fill in those niches. So how can you be part of Friends of InDepthNH.org? Well, simple. And we're going to try to keep it as simple as we can. We're asking people to tell your friends, ask them, sign up for the free newsletter at InDepthNH.org. It's fun, and tell them why you enjoy reading us. That would be, just that alone is great word of mouth advertising. We can't really afford to advertise yet, so you'd be like our free advertising. Second, we're hoping to encourage you to, if you can afford a small donation to NewsMatch, your donation up to $1,000 would be matched only in November and December. And you know what? To be a member of Friends of InDepthNH.org, that's free. You don't have to donate to NewsMatch. If you felt like you could and you felt like you chose to. Many of you have been giving all year long. So I have to say thank you. Not just keep asking for more money, but I don't think there's a day that I don't go to the mailbox or open our donation button that we aren't getting donations. And some of them just really blow my mind. I'm so grateful. We've gotten some wonderful grants this year. So it's gonna, if we can maximize NewsMatch, we'll be golden. My other thought is if, let's say you know a business, you work for a business, or you know some philanthropists, people who have the kind of money that could really invest in the future of news, you know, $1,000 or more, they could perhaps be local matchers. But I don't want to get too much into detail about that because we're fortunate to have Courtney Lewis here tonight. She's going to tell us all about it. She's from the national organization and she is, nobody knows more about NewsMatch than Courtney. And she can explain how it works. And every year we've been invited to participate, I think for the last 6 or 7 years. And every year, Courtney and now another young lady named Maida Strang help us out. It's a wonderful organization. If you're a nonprofit news outlet or considering starting one, that's the gold standard. INN is the gold standard in the whole country. And we've got so many different issues and things going on in the nonprofit world. We need a lot of help. We've got 2 new volunteers that have been helping a lot. We have Linda Gripsch and Barbara Tatro. They're going to be the point people for Friends of InDepthNH.org. Now, it sounds kind of simple, but what is it lacking from what I've told you so far is how are we going to have all this fun she's talking about? Well, that's going to be up to you, but we're thinking of having, meetups in different sections of the state. I know it would be difficult for people in Colebrook to drive all the way to Portsmouth. So all of those things are what you can do to help build this. It's a very loosely knit group. It's not, we don't have bylaws for the Friends of In-Depth New Hampshire. It's what you're going to make of it, and it's really our cheerleaders. You'd be our cheerleaders and our supporters, and maybe even point out if you think we're doing something wrong, but that rarely happens. I'm kidding. Of course it happens
That
sometimes.
never happens, does it?
Never
Nancy?
happens.
Never
And
happens. Never happens.
we're really lucky.
Yeah, we are lucky, and we have Courtney here who's coming to us from Pittsburgh tonight, and she is the go-to person for the NewsMatch program. I want to mention that Montana's shown a comment that we need to eventually discuss. Cheryl Dutzel would like to see more coverage on county government. So if you all want to be thinking about how we could do that, how we could accomplish that. So, but in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Courtney Lewis from INN, and she's going to tell us all about NewsMatch. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Nancy, Steve, and Bob for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. Nancy, I think I've known you for maybe even 3 years now. I'm working with you at the Institute for Nonprofit News and through one of our programs, NewsMatch. So I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see some visuals of like what the program actually is. So give me a second here. And again, my name's Courtney Lewis. So the Institute for Nonprofit News, Beverly alluded to this, but what we do is we imagine a future where communities around the country, everyone has a quality news source that they can find and access. And so we focus on the business side. You know, many people that run nonprofit news organizations are well-experienced journalists, and where they could use support and help is thinking about ways to fundraise and strengthen the organization so that it's sustainable. That's where we come in. We support newsrooms like In-Depth New Hampshire and more than 450 others. What unites them all is that they're all nonprofit, they're nonpartisan, and they are dedicated to public service. You may have heard numerous headlines about the decline of local news across the country. And it's very true. Like in 2023, the rate of local newspapers that closed were about 2.5 every week. So every week, about 2.5 local newspapers closed around the country. But the good news is that something else is happening. There's another side to this story. And the fact that, you know, the commercial model for news is certainly struggling, but in its wake, there's a new type of network that's emerging. And In-Depth New Hampshire is a part of that story. In-Depth New Hampshire began in 2015, right, Nancy?
Yes, yes.
And it's a part of the story of filling the gap. Nonprofit news, what nonprofit news focuses on is quality, in-depth and explanatory journalism, and stories that would otherwise go uncovered. The growth that you're seeing in the nonprofit news sector, they aren't just any type of newsrooms, you know, people that, you know, it's a hobby for. It really is about doing mission critical work of serving the public. And because they're focused on serving the public, they do things a little bit differently. One example that we see that's pretty common around nonprofit news is that community is at the center. So nonprofit newsrooms, they don't just sit behind closed doors and write stories. they listen to the community. They're surveying the community. They're out in the community trying to figure out what people are actually concerned about and what people are actually experiencing. And that's what guides the stories that they tell. Many, like Nancy shared, many host gatherings. It's not just about sharing the news, but also about building and bridging community through information gathering and sharing. Nonprofit news, it specializes in investigative reporting, hard-hitting, fact-based journalism that holds public officials to account. We're not talking clickbait journalism just to get eyeballs on a story. And they're also transparent about their editorial practices and funding. In fact, we require certain editorial independence and financial transparency standards of all INN members so that you as a reader know who's behind the journalism. This is the nonprofit news difference. But the thing about nonprofit news is it's also different in the way that it is funded. It relies on community. The financial success of a nonprofit newsroom, isn't dependent upon shareholders and executives at the top. It really is dependent on community members who the nonprofit newsroom serves to contribute. It requires a village. The problem with the old business model of nonprofit news, of news in general, is that it relied on a single revenue source, ad revenue, right? And when you had things like Google and Facebook enter the market, it took all that ad spending from the newsroom. And that made it collapse. The entire system collapsed. So if we want a future where you have newsrooms like In-Depth New Hampshire that exist in years to come, they're going to need to rely on different types of support and different types of people in your community. Of course, that includes national funders that care about democracy, that care about the state of New Hampshire. But more importantly, it requires people in the community, small businesses, other local nonprofits, family foundations, everyday people need to be bought in on sustaining and supporting the news that serves them. NewsMatch is a program that literally is designed to sort of accelerate this through a matching gift campaign. So basically, NewsMatch pulls together the resources of national funders and local funders into a big pot. And what we say is that when a newsroom can generate a donation from someone in their community, we match it. What that means is that every dollar you give to New Hampshire, In-Depth New Hampshire, between November and December, it's going to be matched by another funder who says, you know what, I'm going to join you. Let's make this happen. So I'm going to play a short, quick video that kind of explains how it all works, and then I'll finish up.
Critical news reporting inspires people to take action. So what better way to make an impact than to fund news on the issues and communities that are important to you? Through NewsMatch, philanthropic leaders are leveraging their funds to match donations to newsrooms nationwide, train news professionals to find and cultivate new sources of funding, and raise awareness of nonprofit journalism's impact across the country. As a NewsMatch funder, you can support coverage of the places and topics that matter most to you and watch your gifts multiply exponentially, making it possible for even the smallest, most innovative nonprofit news outlets to grow and thrive. This means more reporting, stronger communities, and a healthier democracy. Democracy needs news. News needs you. Find out more at NewsMatch.org.
You might be asking, okay, that's great. So where's all this money coming from? Where's all this match money coming from? Well, INN, part of our job is to basically engage with national funders like the Knight Foundation, Democracy Fund, to get them involved and pull together their resources. But what's exciting to see over the past few years is how local supporters are joining them in that effort. So if you look, the dark blue, that's the percentage of match dollars that are coming from national funders that we at INN raise. But the bright purple to the right, that's the percentage of matches that are coming from everyday people, from small businesses, from foundations who are on the ground in these communities. And you'll see over time, and particularly in 2022, where local supporters surpassed the amount of dollars that were coming at the national level. And it's not because NewsMatch is giving less, it's because local supporters like you are giving more. The big numbers, we're talking over $300 million over the past 6 years in which community members, funders have supported nonprofit news organizations. And the next NewsMatch campaign is just around the corner, starting on November 1st. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Beverly, who's going to take us to the next part of our conversation and come back to how you can get involved. Thank you so much. And I'll be also welcome to take your questions at the end.
Great, great. Thank you, Courtney. That was informative. And I come from advertising, and between Craigslist, Google, and Facebook, it just took everything we had. All of a sudden, there was nothing, and that's what happened to local news. And so it's encouraging to see this rise of nonprofit news sites coming up and saying, no, we're not going to let news disappear or be directed to by one group or another. And to talk about why he's involved, Steve Taylor is here with us tonight. He is a member of our board of directors. He's a longtime newspaper man, and he's got a great book out too. If you ever get to the library, read Steve's book. His memoir is a terrific book. So, Steve, would you be so kind to talk to us about what you think about In-Depth New Hampshire, and tell us a little about Nancy too?
I don't know where to begin with that assignment. Anyway, I'm a lifelong news junkie, going way back to when I barely learned to read, age 6. I devour newspapers. I devour news. I follow television news, everything. And as Beverly and Courtney have described, I guess I went into a period of melancholy here in New Hampshire as I saw our long-established news sources wither and shrink and fall away. Right in my neck of the woods, our local paper used to have a circulation of 20,000, and now it's barely over 7,000. And you get the picture. And that's been happening all over the place. But here comes this In-Depth New Hampshire. I mean, I had no idea what she was up to until she got hold of me, said, hey, listen, you better take a look at this. And so I did, and I've been hooked ever since. I think there are things that really stand out with In-Depth New Hampshire. The coverage, the breadth, with really a tiny staff, the material, the content they generate in a day's time is really fantastic. But not only do they cover the news, they give analysis, and that is wonderful. They got a guy named Gary Reno, and he takes a look at crazy stuff that your eyes will glaze over until you read Gary's thing, and you begin to understand about school funding or voting law changes, all that kind of stuff. It's good to report on it, but it's even better when somebody that knows the story, has the historical perspective, can break it down and show how does that affect me, a reader, me as a citizen, and that is a tremendous service they're providing. It's been amazing the last few months. The number of stories that In-Depth New Hampshire has generated, they've broken, that they own. And, really, if you need to understand some of this stuff, there's no better place to turn than In-Depth New Hampshire. In my part of the state, there's a morning aggregator of news. He pulls stuff out of Vermont and off magazines and broadcasts and everything. But just about every week, he's got something that has come from In-Depth New Hampshire that you need to read, and that, a reasonably intelligent, committed citizen is going to benefit from reading. It just is, it's just so important. We've heard what Courtney said, absolutely amazing. I think she's all over it, and it's terrific. But when we see here in New Hampshire, right here, when we become a news desert, a local paper lets us down, doesn't cover the big stuff or the routine stuff that may not sound like much in another part of the state, but is vitally important to us here. And to see that fading away, and it's very, very troubling. I grieve over it every day. I said, "Oh, I wish I was editing that paper. We'd have had this, this, and this." But here's Nancy and here's her team. Gary, as I mentioned, fantastic. Damian Fisher, Paula Tracy. I mean, there's a nucleus of I don't know how many hundreds of years of experience. They know New Hampshire. They breathe New Hampshire. I mean, they're terrific. And where we are now is we need to give them the tools to widen the net. And there's some stories that you can't do it all in a day, but some strengthening of staff and support through this not-for-profit model will carry it forward. And I'm a lot more confident that we'll see this thing expand, grow, and move ahead. And it'll be a testimony to the devotion, the hard work, and the professionalism of Nancy and her team. So that's my spiel.
That's a great one. Thank you. You know, I get the news app on my phone, and I just cannot believe how many stories I cannot read because they're all behind paywalls. And I know you and Nancy both can speak to that we will never have a paywall with In-Depth New Hampshire. We will always be available. And if you would be so kind to talk about that.
Well, don't get me going on paywalls. I mean, they tease up stories and say, "Oh, gee, I should read this. This sounds interesting. This is a big deal." And then you go, and there's all kinds of mumbo jumbo to get through the paywall, and then you're apt to be disappointed, or they've taken down the story, and so you can't find it. And so that's very, very common now. A lot of these newspaper paywalls, they start right in giving you these threatening notices. This is your next to last story. That's all you're going to get. Well, it doesn't encourage me to want to get in the habit of watching. It's crazy. I think.
Yeah. And Nancy, you promise, right? You promise we will never have a paywall. Is that correct?
Yes, no paywall. We also do not accept sponsored content. Sponsored content is a type of advertising that looks like a news story, only it's prepared by the buyer, the advertiser, or if not prepared by them, they have final say over it. And there are little words that say like sponsored content, but I've been doing this business for like almost 40 years, and I often can't detect, is that sponsored content or is that real news? And I know some very important newspapers, the New York Times accepts sponsored content. We will never do that. I think it cheats our readers.
Do you want to go over how easy is it to become a friend of In-Depth? Do you have like a few bullet points that you could cover?
Yeah, actually it's free. It's really friendofinDepthNH.org. It's a state of mind. You know, just feel it. But email me, nancywestnews@gmail.com. This is a brand new initiative. So we're really building it with you. If you choose to join, we're building it. You have as much say as anyone. There are two people who have agreed to be point persons for this. Barbara Tatro, she's on our board, and Linda Greep. They're going to be the point people for Friends of InDepthNH.org. And really what we're looking for is cheerleaders, people to get the word out. We don't have a big enough fund to advertise. I'm not sure it would be that effective for our kind of news outlet. But what has really worked is friends telling friends, people telling coworkers, and ask them, sign up for our free newsletter. The other thing, although we're free, if you'd like to make a donation during NewsMatch, it begins November 1st, runs all the way through December 31st. It's huge, and we've been invited again this year to participate. This is a gold standard of fundraiser through the Institute for Nonprofit News. And every dollar will be matched. Any dollar anybody gives up to $1,000 will be matched between those timeframes. And the other thing, if you know of a business, or perhaps you own a business and you would like to become a local matcher, that is a very, very, very important to us to grow our local matchers. And those are usually businesses or philanthropists who can afford to give more than $1,000 to be identified as local matchers. And then that extends how much we can raise with matching dollars. And but like I said, it's free. You don't have to do any of those things. You do have to, just, it can be a state of mind. You don't even have to sign your name anywhere. But we hope you will, because I'd like to see this also morph into something where we can have a little bit more fun. I don't know about you, but I kind of stopped having fun during COVID at some point. And I love to get out with people. So we're hoping to have, in different parts of the state, different gatherings of like-minded people who care about news, and we can talk about news and focus on issues such as the right to know law, how to write a right to know request, get involved with your local community that you want to, there's information you want and your local town hall isn't giving it to you. Let's talk about those things. There are fun ways to get together and also help save local news. That's who we are. Join us. And I can tell you wanna. I know you want to do this.
So it's pretty simple. Just sign up for the newsletter. Encourage your friends to donate during NewsMatch.
Yeah.
If you have wealthier friends, you can ask them to be philanthropists to recruit local matches. And then a variety of perhaps regional events that we'd like to have in the year. We're looking towards 2025 that there are 5 regions. If I've got that right, there could be 6, but one for each area that we can then just start being in person with folks.
And another big thing we need help with, we are going to have a huge celebration for our 10th anniversary. And we'd
Yes.
like you to help us plan that. It's in September of 2025. And, it's really going to be a big bash. And, we deserve it. We all deserve it.
We will be
So
10 years
fun.
old. Yes.
Yes, 10 years old. Who'd have
Yeah.
thought it?
What organization's growing? What news organization is growing today? Not instead of what, Courtney, did you say 2.5 newspapers a week are failing? We're
Yeah.
growing. We're
And we're
growing.
also hoping to help the failing newspapers grow as well. We've been experimenting with giving away all of our originally reported stories to other news outlets, as long as they use the format at the end of the story. And it's still in the infancy, but people, some of the publishers are starting to use it. That helps us as well. It expands how many people get to see our original reporting. I think some people think the kind of reporting we do, has been, missing in action for a long time. And we still do it and we want to share it. So
And I want to also say that Nancy West is available. This woman will take a phone call, answer an email, answer a text, and and I think she does it 24/7. I'll be honest with you. And you can reach her at her email is nancywestnews@gmail.com. And her phone number is all over the website. You can get in touch with Nancy yourself and don't hesitate because she's great to talk to and she's fun.
you know what? There's a lot of need in New Hampshire. There's a lot of things that people are totally unaware of because they don't make the nightly news usually. And I think Steve Taylor mentioned a couple of them. education funding has been an issue in this state, I think, for 30 years. The schools have never been funded adequately. And in the last few years, we've noticed that the legislature has passed something called education freedom accounts that allows state money to be used to send for students at private schools. There's a lot of, you might have an opinion on one side or the other. We give you the information about what's happening. I believe it's going to take $28 million to fund that initiative this year, the education funding accounts. And this is a movement across the country. If you read ProPublica, there's other states that are having the same situation. And that's just one of the issues. Last year, we had redistricting. Some of our voting districts have been so redistricted, you're probably not going to see a Democrat in those slots for another decade till it becomes the Democrats' turn to redistrict, and hopefully they'll. It's not just one party that wants to keep all the cookies in the cookie jar, but we learn about the reporting from Gary Rayno. I've been a reporter forever, and I learn every time I edit one of his columns, I learn something about how government works in New Hampshire.
Yes. Yeah.
And he puts it in simple, readable form. And
he's so great. He's so great. And he's available. We need to get to some of the comments, if I may. Can we go back to Sherry Dutzel? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Would like to see more coverage of county government. She also is asking, can a reporter dedicate some time covering a municipality and be placed on a retainer so the locals get news? What do you think, folks? How do we cover the county?
You know what? I would love to cover the counties, because the counties are where a huge amount of money is spent. You know, the counties take care of the retirement homes, the county jails. They spend a ton of money, and I don't know of a one that's being properly covered. When there were adequate reporters in the state, and we have to go back to maybe the year 2000, 2005, every single county commission meeting was being covered, I believe, either by a correspondent at the union leader or the union leader or one of the local papers. And now there's very few county commissioners who are really being covered well. I think the Belknap County commissioners get good coverage from the Laconia Sun and the Conway Sun. But you're right. Who was that from?
Sherry Dutz.
Yeah, Sherry, you are so right. We need coverage. I would like to cover a lot of the selectmen's meetings. We had a right to know outing that we put on one year. And some people came, and somebody from Franconia told me during this right to know seminar that she was not allowed to record her local selectmen's meetings. And I thought, this is because they're not being covered by any of the local papers. I can't promise we're going to cover every county commission. I would love to, but I think if we can keep moving in the right direction. Hillsborough County is the largest county, so if we could, you got to start somewhere, but I don't see that in our immediate future on this budget. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. If we keep doing what we're doing, and if you hear of a specific issue at a specific meeting, that's a little bit easier. But and write to your local paper and say, we'd like to see more coverage of the county commissioners. It's hugely important. It's like the executive council. Hardly anybody was covering the executive council meetings, and every contract that is signed in the state of New Hampshire has to go through the governor and council meetings. Every single appointment for every judge and major job.
Department heads, yes, that's right. You're right. Department heads, and that executive council, those meetings, they're dispensing millions and millions of dollars. I mean, it's not chump change. This is a big thing. Highway contracts, buildings, all kinds of things. And as far as I can tell, In Depth New Hampshire is the only place that will tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just move on here then? She wanted to know, so we're saying that placing a retainer, maybe not right now, but, or someone to do this kind of work, but it's on our radar. We're listening and it's
Oh.
on our radar.
That one's a little bit more complicated. I've been asked that before. If somebody couldn't pay a staffer to just cover one town, and I have a problem with it ethically, but I think there's a way around my problem with it. I'll have to give it more thought, but we've just got to grow big enough that we can make sure we can cover. When I was a correspondent with the Union Leader, we covered 22 towns. Now,
Wow.
did I cover all 22 very well? Probably not, but we were able to kind of keep abreast of what the issues were. So I'd like to see us get big enough that we can get some correspondence out there.
Yeah.
And there may be a better, I'd love to talk to you, Sherry, sometime about what you're really, how are you seeing this work? This is the first I've thought of it.
And I mispronounced her name. It's Sherry Dutzy, Dutzy. And Sherry, we do have your email address because you signed up on Eventbrite. But and again, you can always reach out to Nancy. I'm telling you, that's a doable situation. I have Robert LaMontagne from Westminster, Vermont, is saying we have problems with the foster care system and the family court system. What would you say to that?
I would say, hello, Robert, how are you? I know Robert.
He said
And
he
he's
knows Nancy
been
West.
very active on this particular issue. And he's right on target. There are many people who have complaints against, not against, but about how the family courts work, and how the court system in general works. I have my own complaints about the court system, not being able to get to many of the different hearings and court trials because they're just too far to drive to be able to make economic sense. At the same time, the state court system has a WebEx camera in every courtroom. And when they feel like it, they'll make that particular trial open to the public through WebEx. I've been arguing for a long time that WebEx should be available on every single hearing. It's like having a pew. It's like a pew in the courtroom. It's like an extra pew. And Robert has been very strong in advocating for different upgrades to how much information the court is going to give to the public. He attends all of the different once in a while, the court will send out people to take input from the public. He shows up and he voices his opinion. And I thank you for that, Robert. And we hope to do more too about holding the court system accountable. And the legislature and the executive branch, having so many years without really a lot of strong coverage from every news outlet in the state, we lost something like 80% of the news jobs between the year 2000 and, I think it was last time I looked, 2024. So nobody can do as well as great a job as we really want to do in our hearts. So help us grow. Buy a subscription to your local paper. We're not the only ones here. Support news. We like it when you make donations here. But these, there's a lot of very honorable, terrific newspapers in the state. I don't want to lose them.
No, not at all. Rob is also asking that at some point in time, could we have a call-in line? that we could hear their comments. They can ask their questions directly. If he knew what it took us to get onto our Zoom event tonight, it would be a little bit harder than we could imagine. But Montana can do anything, I'm sure. What do you think, Nancy? Could we have a call-in line at some point in time?
Well, I think that's something that the Friends of InDepthNH.org can work on, and that's the kind of thing, if you want to do that, there's other ways of doing this, on having live Facebook meetings more frequently, not something that we advertise, or maybe we just say every Friday night, tune in to such and such. That's why we need more warm bodies to get out to the public more often. Robert, thank you. You're in charge of that now, remember.
Does anybody have any comments? There is 5 reasons that Bob Charest, our board of directors chairperson, came up with why you should be reading In Depth New Hampshire. Do you have that, Nancy?
No.
We tackle tough issues like the Lorry List, secure psychiatric unit, Northern Pass, rogue legislatures, and much, much more.
I had it, but I don't have it handy, and I meant to.
All right, so I'm going to continue. We have superior coverage of the State House, including the Senate, House, Governor, Executive Council, and many departments. We have our veteran reporters. We're reliable. We are reliable and trustworthy. And if you ever want to tempt Nancy to go against her ethics, I warn you, don't try it. Don't even attempt it. It won't work. And again, no paywalls. It says here, we work hard every day to bring you news that matters. So what do you think about our future, Nancy? Where are we going to be here in a year and 2 years? What's your goal?
We are just growing really, really well. Our goal is to build our business component so that we don't have to spend so much time fundraising. And, like I said, we have very generous people in the state who give all year long. They'll give all year long and then come back for NewsMatch and give some more. We really do have a lot of generous people, but it's going to take, I didn't realize how much money it would take to really build to the point where we can hire people to sell advertising, to run events, to bring in revenue. And I think to get to a budget of that magnitude, it's going to be something in the, maybe just to stay small, even in the area of $400,000 or $500,000. I think that could really get us going. Once we have somebody that can really bring in revenue, and we have a fine start because we have Linda Greep is doing volunteer fundraising for us. She just started a couple of months ago, and she's a wonderful human being who is talented at this. I've been doing it for a long time. I've gotten a little better at it, but we need a professional. When that happens, I'll go back to full-time reporting and just really have some time to get at the stories. I have to admit that there are stories that we just can't get to that I would like to, that look at the bigger picture of especially government officials, how things are working in Concord, and we'd like to get there.
Courtney, could you address that as well in regards to what's the budget? What should a budget be for a small or nonprofit news site?
Yeah, like I said, we have about 450 members that we monitor and track numbers like this. And so if you look at just state and regional papers that In-Depth New Hampshire is part of that group, the average total revenue that other newsrooms around the country are raising is around $514,000. So let's say $500,000. And when you look at the total pie of all the money going to state and regional outlets, a third of it is coming from individual donors.
A third of that $500,000, is that what you're saying?
A third of the total, when you add the entire sector together. Yeah, okay. So you could piece it like that, but when you add the entire group of state and regional papers, like nonprofit that are across the country, 33% of the total revenue they're all raising is coming from individuals, not advertisement. Advertisement makes up about 15%. So like growth is really reliant on community support for nonprofit news. It's paramount to the growth of nonprofit news organizations.
Thank
Or
you.
from grants from individuals, from corporations, however you can do it.
However
It
you
is
can do
not
it.
the old way. You're not going to walk the streets, sell an ad, and then that money goes to the bottom line. We just don't have that kind of that's just not the format for a nonprofit news site selling advertising. It's what you're laying out. But we're willing. We're going to make it happen. And Nancy, where do you think we'll be in 5 years from now? Will we be at 500,000 in 5 years?
Oh, easily. You know, I think if we're successful, when we're successful with NewsMatch this year, that's why we're starting out already. Normally, I wait till November 1st to start NewsMatch and send out some letters and just try to reach people maybe with a story or two. We're pulling out all the stops to grow. We don't want to wait 5 years before we can really start looking at ourselves as sustainable. That's with sustainable jobs for people. Right now, we don't have one full-time employee. All of us, including me, are what is called contract workers, paid per job, and the rest is volunteers. And we have a very strong board, you know, people like Steve Taylor and Beverly Stoddart and Bob Charest and all sorts of wonderful people who put their time in, you know, and I just can't say enough about that. But that's what is part, that's why we're starting Friends of InDepthNH.org. We want more cheerleaders. We want more people to know about us. I hate it when I call up, you know, if I have to call somebody up for a news story and the reception says, who? You know, but I give them the spiel. You know, we need more readers, and we are the go-to place for State House news and the things that we really excel at, you know. And it's not bragging. It's, you know, once you do this work, if I had known what a lousy reporter I was when I started, I probably would have gone back to waitressing, you know. I mean, it takes a while to get really good at reporting. And we just had a lovely young person come in because she chose InDepthNH.org as a place where she wanted to train. She had just gotten her master's degree from Columbia, and she worked for us and did a bang-up job. Wonderful to work with somebody young and talented. And darn, didn't they swoop her up in New York City? She got a job at that magazine. What's the name of the magazine? It's a very good magazine, not Money magazine. It's anyway,
Forbes? New Yorker?
Fortune magazine. I'm sorry,
Fortune.
just had a brain
Fortune.
spasm. And she's doing wonderful work there, but she wants to come back. But she needs, like everybody does, healthcare, a real job with regular salary, and not have to wait until the next story comes in. And we do try to pay well. So right now we're looking for reporters, you know, and I would prefer to bring in some young person. We have an intern working with us, 2 interns working with us, one from Southern New Hampshire University who's spending a lot of her time with Bev Stoddart, and we have another one who's working with us on social media from Keene State College. And it's just wonderful. They're bringing new life and talent and learning and helping us. It's great. Those are interns, unpaid interns. So not everybody can afford to do that. So I think we're going to have a staff of at least 4 reporters, some correspondents. You asked what our goal would be.
Right.
4 solid paid reporters, maybe half a dozen correspondents. We've applied to for the Report for America to get one of their interns. And I'm really hoping we get that because I think that would be a unique experience for us. And we've applied before in the past, but we weren't selected. But this, like I think 6 times is maybe the charge.
This is our year, Nancy. This is our year.
And we just got a major grant from Press Forward, which is really not just about the money, but it's about what a great job we're doing and that some national funders are recognizing that. That is going to give a lot of impetus to local funders to say, oh, I guess they're worth it. How do I help them build a $500,000 a year budget?
Right.
We have one of our board members, Gina, she does all of our bookkeeping. She keeps our money in good shape, good shape, and
For
does
free. She
all of
doesn't
our
charge us.
yes. And so we've got the people to build to get to where we are now, but it's time to go off I was going to say go off the deep end, but dive into the deep end and really. I think NewsMatch can get us there this year. We might not be 500,000, but it'll be close enough that we can start building our business component.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. I've got a note here from Rick Martin to contact Rick Martin of the Constitutional Law Group. I can send information that needs to get out to the public. It sounds like you've got a lead on something there.
All righty.
All right, Rick Martin.
And I would watch the
Constitutional Law
next
Group.
few days. We've got some hot stories coming up.
Hot stories. Okay.
That's what we like. We like how,
do.
it's in the blood,
Right. Yeah, like you say, 1,000 years of experience here. So Steve, do you have any final words?
And I'm only 100 of those years.
Beverly, this is such a wonderful conversation tonight. I've learned, I have enjoyed. I can't think of a thing that I heard that I don't loudly endorse, second, or whatever you want. I think we're in a position to move ahead. I think we're on a roll already, and particularly great that Courtney would join us and bring her perspective, because it was so interesting to learn, what's happening elsewhere. That $500,000, that's a goal for us. Let's get there.
Yes.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
And Courtney, do you any final words on NewsMatch and nonprofit news that you'd like to make?
No, just to thank. And November 1st, that's the first day in which your donations are matched. So if you can, I know it's a busy year and a lot of people are asking for your money during an election year, but if you can, give what you can to In-Depth New Hampshire. It goes a long way.
I know this is Courtney's busy time of the year too. So, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Steve Taylor, you're always into something. He still milks cows,
Oh.
Thank you all. And Beverly juggles a million things. She's a writer, she's an author, and does some great columns for us. Anyway, we're just very blessed. Thank you all.
Really, thank you.
Good. Okay.
And so we'll say good night if everybody is all set.
Yeah,
Montana, are you all set? We'll assume he is.
I am all set. Yeah.
You are all set. All
Great
right.
job, guys.
Thank you so much. This has been fun. And look forward to some of these future parties. All right. Let's get together. Let's get together in person.
I need a party.
That's great.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh.